Hello, welcome to the Comic Book Commentary. I'm Bo Leidig, and this week we're going to be finishing up our look at the original Spawn WildC.A.T.S team-up miniseries with Spawn WildC.A.T.S Devil Day number 4. So let's zoom in and take a closer look. First published in April of 1996, we see here that the cover prominently features the Ipsissimus, aka Spawn of 2015. I really still kind of hate that name. And he is basically given the business to the WildC.A.T.S team and Spawn from 1996, as this is the issue which features the final battle and showdown between the team trying to prevent this horrible future and the evil, Mabolja killing, hell on earth ruling Ipsissimus. And honestly, with this being only our second really good look at him, I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't take the time to try and make him look more distinct from Spawn in 1996. I mean, yeah, you get like the skulls being a little bit more aggressive, some extra spikes here and there. But if you compare this to what Greg Capullo did in the Angela miniseries, where Spawn's costume just kind of went haywire when he was in heaven as a reaction to the holy energy and place that it was surrounded by, it seems to me that they could have gone a little bit more in that direction, where the costume is very much way more like out of control, way more, over the top in its appearance to really exemplify the evil that this future Spawn now possesses. I mean, you get a few extra spikes coming out of the cape, even though that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't really matter that much, given that at this point, it's all just hell energy and, supernatural stuff going on. But to make him look this similar just seems like a real missed opportunity, in my opinion. When we get into the book, we see that on the inside cover, just like the other 3 issues, we do not get the credits for this book. Instead, we get an advertisement. 2 ads in particular, one for the Art of Chiodo trading card set, and one for the Wildstorm swimsuit trading card set, which I would guess is likely a lot of the same images that existed in the Wildstorm swimsuit issue, though I don't have that issue or this trading card set, so I'm only making an assumption here. I could easily be wrong. The one that actually I find more interesting is the Art of Chiodo trading card set. I am not aware of another company that was putting out trading card sets of just one of their artists. And this is a really unique idea that I kind of wish had been more prevalent. This is a really cool way to feature one of your artists in a way that's not just some of their books or whatever. Like, this is something that's a little bit more like off the beaten path and super unique. I kind of like this a lot. And I really wish this was something that had caught on and been a bigger thing in the industry at that time. As we get into the story, we see that it picks up exactly where we left off in issue number 3, with Maul in the clutches of the gigantic Ipsissimus, who is taunting him, telling him that this is his future, this is everyone's future. He then flicks Maul across the room like an insect, as we see Maul flying through the room at high speed and smashing into the wall. And at this point, the Ipsissimus tells him that this is the future that everyone will have to face and that he is the one who's in control. Oh boy, a 2-page vertical splash, my favorite, hooray. We see here that the Ipsissimus is now standing above all of the team, and he begins to explain that they've walked right into his trap. He's already wiped out all of the Coda assassins, the Vampire Triad, and the Black Razors that were being trained by Santini. He then tells them, interestingly, that he remembers the feeling that they have in the pit of their stomach and the doubts that they're having about whether or not they should have come here this day. We find out from Voodoo that Maul has been knocked unconscious, and 2015 Grifter states, what does he mean that he remembers? Hadrian says that what he remembers or what he's saying right now doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that all of their allies are dead and that they were set up. However, Spawn tries to rally the troops, as it were, as he states, don't be worried about this guy. It's really easy to sound intimidating when you're the size of a building. However, the Ipsissimus continues to taunt them as we see him shrink his size down. He states, "Oh, is the size what was bothering you? I can bring it down to your level. Honestly, size isn't really all that important when you're a god." The Absissimist then states, "I would never dream of intimidating you. That's unbecoming of someone such as me. Besides, I have servants for such things," as he simply says, "Jeremy, fetch." At this point, we see 2015 Maul spring into action, a giant in his own right, as he grabs 1996 Grifter and the entire team begins to scramble. 96 Grifter says, "What are we supposed to do here? Jeremy's our friend. This isn't his fault." And Spartan realizes that this is all just part of the psychological factor that the Absissimist hopes to employ against them, knowing that they don't want to hurt their friend. He yells to Voodoo to see if she can use her powers to calm him down, but Voodoo states that this is impossible, as it seems as though his mind is dead and that she can't reach him. 2015 Grifter then pulls a pistol out of his coat and states that he's going to put an end to this, as we see Spawn look back and say, "Wait, what are you doing?" We then get an advertisement for the Claiborne Moore Grifter statue, and I completely forgot this existed and now want it more than anything. This statue is awesome. I am going to have to dig around on eBay to see if there's people selling these at good prices, because, ooh, it is begging for me to buy it. This thing is so cool. I want it so bad. Getting back to the story, we see 2015 Grifter take aim with his pistol. As he states, "At this point, Jeremy's gone. Our friend has been taken from us, and the only thing that we can do for him now is give him back his dignity and his freedom," as he pulls the trigger and blasts a hole through the top of Jeremy's head, killing him instantly. Zealot is shocked as she states, "By the goddess, he's dead," and 96 Grifter tells everyone to get out of the way as he's going down. Now, I find this to be preposterous for the most part. The idea that this ultimate power Maul would be taken out by one shot from a pistol seems ludicrous. Like, this is Maul at his absolute pinnacle of physical prowess. He's grown to the size of an absolute giant. He's like 2 or 3 stories tall, and he should be nigh indestructible in this form. And for him to just go down with one shot is a huge waste. Like, why even reveal him to be the ultimate guard dog of the Absissimists in this giant size form if he could be so easily defeated? Nothing about this makes sense from the point of the story or why you would have ever done this. Like, it's just a complete waste. He should have been way more of a struggle to take down than he was. And this just seems like a complete lack of forethought in the writing, or perhaps the way that they wanted to conclude the story. But, like, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's just weird. Like, why do this? As some of the team members gather around 2015 Maul's body, we see Voodoo scream out, "How could you do that?" However, 96 Grifter states, "I actually think I agree with my future self on this one. This is the only way we could possibly save our friend." However, there is one person very angry about this, and that's the Absissimist, as he screams, "You killed my pet. You bring these adolescents from the past to confront me, and now this? You have no idea all the years I spent punishing and degrading him to turn him into a subservient beast, and now I'm going to make you pay," as he prepares to unleash an attack to destroy 2015 Grifter. However, Hadrian sees this and screams no as he rushes to jump in the way of the attack. He makes it just in time and is subsequently destroyed by the blast unleashed by the Absissimists. We then see 2015 Grifter scream his name as he holds up the destroyed head of Hadrian, screaming at it, "Why did you do that? All these years I thought you hated me, but in actuality, you were my friend. You were the best friend I ever had." We also see that 96 Spartan is caught off guard by hearing these words as he realizes just how much he actually meant to Grifter, and he wonders if this is something that should be a warning to him about the relationship he and Grifter have in 96. At this point, Spawn has had enough, as he states, "I'm tired of watching this travesty of the future trample on everything that I've always believed in, and it's time I confront myself," as we see him leap into action in an attempt to finally subdue the Absissimists. As Spawn makes his move, we see the Obsessimus hold him back with little effort, as he even starts to taunt him, stating, "Oh yeah, I remember this part. This is where you believe this to be a battle of innocence versus corruption, when in reality, it's a battle of naivety versus experience. You look at you, you're just trying to hit me with your fist to conserve your meager power levels. Mine are without limits." But Spawn doesn't want to buy into this, as he states, "Oh yeah, well, I seem to recall that until you found that amulet, you were basically nothing, so why don't I just take that from you?" The Obsessimus screams, "Stop, you don't know what you're doing." However, Spawn grabs the amulet off of his neck and states, "No, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking away the source of all your powers." However, this is a gamble that Spawn did not win, as the Obsessimus explains that the amulet has nothing to do with his powers, that all the amulet did was give him the courage and determination to go confront the Mabalja and kill him, and that the powers that crackle within him now are the ones that he stole from the Mabalja's corpse, and they are without limit. But he then tells Spawn that if the amulet means so much to him, that he can take it, and he gives it away freely. He then unleashes an attack that sends Spawn flying across the room with a huge blast of energy that fills the entirety of the room. 2015 Zealot rushes to Spawn's side and notices that he's unconscious. She looks up and states, "I've got to get him out of here." However, 2015 Grifter is rather confused, as he states, "Listen, he only took one hit, he's tough." But Zealot explains to him that she's realized the reason that the Obsessimus remembers all of these things is because these are the memories that he had as Spawn. And as long as Spawn is here, he's going to keep remembering everything that happened in the past, and that they're basically giving away their entire battle plan. 2015 Grifter understands that she's correct, as he realizes that they essentially brought an informant along with them. Meanwhile, 96 Maul is finally coming to, as he asks, "What happened? I remember getting flicked across the room by the big guy," when he suddenly turns around and sees his future self dead on the floor. He then states, "Oh my god, what happened?" And funnily enough, 2015 Grifter, of all people, puts his hand on Maul's shoulder and states, "Well, that's kind of a long story, big guy. I'll have to explain later," not really wanting to give him the details of what went down when he was unconscious. He then looks over at 2015 Grifter and tells her to move back to Tapestry's position with Spawn so that he can't witness the battle anymore, as he turns to rally the troops, stating, "We need to keep fighting to give them an exit strategy." Spawn looks at 2015 Zealot and asks her what exactly is going on, and she explains that they have to make a retreat because every part of the battle that he sees is a memory that he's giving to the Obsessimus, and that's essentially just giving the Obsessimus an operator's manual for everything he needs to do. However, Spawn becomes even more confused at this point, as he states, "Wait a minute, I thought that bringing me to the future was supposed to change everything. How exactly is this causing a problem now?" And 2015 Zealot responds simply by stating, "Look, I'm 24 years old. I don't know how any of this works. I'm just trying to deal with it." We then get an advertisement for Netcom, the internet service provider. Now, I'm not going to get into this service. I've done that in the past, though I am rather intrigued by this cool illustration of Grifter on a very manga-inspired motorcycle. I don't know if this comes from a comic book or maybe a trading card. Either way, I really like it. I dig this, and I'd like to know more about where it came from, and I'd actually like to see more of this type of illustration happening in these books. Getting back to the story, we see Spawn and 2015 Zealot running by Santini's body, as Spawn looks at him and states he's dead. And Zealot responds by telling him, "Yeah, well, if things keep going this way, in 30 minutes, we're going to be joining him in the afterlife." Spawn then asks, "Well, where are you taking me exactly?" Zealot tells him that they're falling back to Tapestry's position, and Spawn asks, "Well, do you know if she's in the same spot?" At this point, Zealot responds in a rather smart-alecky remark, stating, "Well, Marlowe's unconscious and Tapestry's paralyzed, so where exactly do you think they were going to get off to?" Tapestry immediately asks, "How is the battle going?" And Zealot informs her terribly, as the Obsessimus has already killed Santini and Hadrian and was waiting for them because he had all of Spawn's memories. Tapestry realizes the grave mistake that she's made and basically just scolds herself, stating, "How could I have been so stupid and not realize that would be the case?" However, we also see right here in the corner of this panel that Spawn is still in possession of the amulet and is holding it in a rather foreboding and menacing manner. Tapestry then immediately realizes that the only way that she can change the tide of battle is to send Spawn back to 1996, so he will no longer have any memories that can be taken by the Abscissimus to use against them. At this point, Zealot asks, well, wait a minute, what should I do? And Tapestry explains that she's sending Zealot back with Spawn, as she still believes that her role in all of this has not yet played out. She uses her powers to dump them back to exactly where they left, and Marlowe is stunned as he states, wait a minute, didn't Void's teleportation work? I mean, everyone else vanished, and you two just kind of went fuzzy for a second. Zealot starts to get to her feet and states, that's because Tapestry must have brought us back to a split second after we were taken, so we've been there and back. Marlowe is confused as he asks, wait a minute, Tapestry, what does that witch have to do with any of this? But Zealot explains, this isn't the same Tapestry you're thinking of. This is a different Tapestry who's lying paralyzed with your unconscious butt in the future, and I really just hope she and everyone else are all right. Meanwhile, back in 2015, the battle is not going well for our heroes, as Grifter shouts out, this guy's unstoppable. Spartan, what are we supposed to do? It's your call, buddy. We then see Spartan thank Grifter, stating, thank you, Cole, I really mean that. And this is a bit of a callback to what we saw in the previous issue, where the two of them got in an argument over who was making the calls for the team and who was in charge. But it also speaks to Spartan not wanting to wind up in the same predicament that he saw their future selves in, where they spent their whole lives being at each other's throats, and only upon their deaths did they finally reconcile their differences. He then tells everyone to fall back to Tapestry's position and that Grifter will take point. As we see the Abscissimus slowly and casually following behind, unleashing one attack after another, he tells them that there's really no reason for them to be afraid, that as they've already served their purpose, he has no reason to kill them because he needs to make sure that they grow up into the embittered wrecks that exist in 2015 to make sure that they go back to 96 to bring themselves to the future to complete all of the actions that have happened. He then explains that he'll likely just erase their memories and send them back to 1996 to make sure that everything plays out accordingly. However, Spartan tells everyone not to listen to him as they make their way back to Tapestry's position. 2015, Grifter states, hey Tapestry, we're back. The Abscissimus is right behind us. We need to rally the troops, but then looks around and asks, wait a minute, where are Spawn and Zealot? We then get an advertisement for an art exhibit of Wildstorm comic book art that was happening at the Words and Pictures Museum in Northampton, Maine. I don't know of anyone who went to this, but if you by any chance are one of the people that went to this exhibit, feel free to talk about it in the comments below. I'd love to know more because this seems like a super cool event that happened in 96. Back in 1996, Zealot is confused as she tries to figure out exactly what she can do. She knows that the amulet is what puts everything in motion and that Spawn is supposed to gain possession of it soon. But what she can't figure out is where it comes from or how he gets his hands on it. It's at this point, though, that she looks over and sees that he's holding something and asks what it is. We see that Spawn is still in possession of the amulet and gazing down upon it and says nothing. However, at this point, Zealot realizes exactly what's happened and puts all the pieces together. She understands that it was her actions bringing Spawn to 2015 and allowing him to gain possession of the amulet from the Abscissimus and then bringing him back to 1996 that set the entirety of this timeline in motion that she's trying to prevent. She immediately tells Spawn to give her the amulet. However, he responds by turning around, backhanding her across the face and stating, I don't think so. We then jump back to 2015 where the Abscissimus hovers above Tapestry and gloats, telling her, I remember saying, I don't think so, and then smacking her across the face. You see, Tapestry, it was your meddling that led to this entire future, and now there's nothing you can do to stop it. He then tells all of them that he is inevitable, and Tapestry realizes that they have to try and do something, but that she doesn't necessarily have the power to do it on her own. The other women, including 1996 Zealot, Void, and Voodoo, all tell her that they're willing to lend her their powers so that she can change just one event to try and prevent this future. We then see Tapestry call out to 2015 Grifter and tell him and the others that they need to protect all of the women and make sure that they can complete their tasks so that they can stop all of this from happening. Grifter says that he's going to do his best, and that while it does sound funny being that they're 20 years in the future after the events take place, that he hopes that they still are in time to make all of this happen. Back in 1996, Spawn continues his onslaught, knocking Marlowe out of the way and drawing down on Zealot. It's at this point that all of the women from the future combine their powers to try and make one alteration to history, something that will prevent the events that led to the predicament they currently find themselves in. Spawn then moves in on Zealot once again, telling her that she's part of history in the making, and that he believes the Abscissimus was right. Why shouldn't he take out the Mabalja and take his rightful place in the Mabalja's role? And that the name Spawn doesn't seem to sound regal enough anymore. However, as he lands another blow, he knocks the mask off of Zealot at this point. As he continues to stalk her, Zealot says, it's the amulet that's making you do this. And Spawn tries to argue, stating, no, I'm the doer, you are the doee, but then stops himself as he realizes that he recognizes the woman on the floor before him, and that this is actually Cyan, the daughter of his former wife, Wanda Blake, and best friend, Terry Fitzgerald, all grown up. He can't believe his eyes as he looks upon her. At this point, Cyan asks, wait a minute, how do you know my name? No one knows that, not even Tapestry. After the Abscissimus rose to power, my mom told me to never use it. Spawn is shocked and stunned and just trying to get his head around everything that's going on here as he states, wait a minute, your mom, what happened to her? And Cyan then informs him she killed herself. Why should you care? At this point, Spawn begins to spiral as he states, oh my God, Cyan, you couldn't kill me in the past or before because there was something that was stopping you. It was something about me and your mom and what could have been. He then grabs her and pulls her in an embrace lovingly and states, I'm so sorry, baby. I didn't mean to hit you. I'm so sorry. Somewhat reminiscent of what we saw when we learned of the one and only time that he struck Wanda when he was still alive as Al Simmons. He then decides to hand the amulet over to her as he states, maybe this can do something. All those birthdays I missed, all of the life that I could have lived with you and your mom, please just take this. I don't know if it'll make things better, but hopefully it'll make some kind of a difference. And this is part of the story where it kind of falls apart for me in a lot of ways. The whole idea that the amulet just suddenly makes Spawn abandon all principles and just suddenly go evil, even though he knows what the future holds and that he was trying to prevent everything. And also this whole idea that he should have been there for Cyan, even though Cyan was born while he was in hell and before the Mabalja sent him back to the world of the living, and that she's not actually his daughter. Yes, she is the daughter he always wanted to have with Wanda, but she is in fact not his. She's the daughter of Terry Fitzgerald and his former wife. And really, Spawn was just always trying to kind of muscle in all of that because he wanted to get Wanda back, even though she had moved on after he died. Back in 2015, the Abscissimus begins to disappear as he screams out, no, what's happening? This isn't part of the story. 96 Spartan and Grifter start to look around and realize that the entire world is disappearing as Spartan realizes that they need to get out of here, and he tells Void to prepare to teleport them all back to 1996. We also see that 2015 Grifter is beginning to disappear as well. As the 96 team prepares to teleport, they try to get both 2015 Grifter and Tapestry to come with them, but Grifter simply states, no, we're part of this world, we'll go out with it. As the 96 team vanishes, Grifter looks down at Tapestry and says, well, babe, it looks like it's just you, me, and the end of the world. As Tapestry tells him, that's good enough for me, come here. We then see the two of them embrace and give each other a kiss as they simply vanish. Back in 1996, the same thing is happening to Cyan as she starts to dematerialize as well. She says that it's happening, it's like I'm just fading away. This makes Spawn go crazy as he says, Cyan, oh no baby, please. How many times do I have to lose you and Wanda and all the life that we could have had? As she starts to completely fade away, she says, "It doesn't hurt. It's like I was never here." And Spawn again screams out, "No, I've got so much to tell you. How strong and beautiful you are, and how much I love the girl who could have been my daughter," as he collapses down in a heap, and we see the 96 Wildcats team reappear behind him. Again, this doesn't make a ton of sense. I get that Spawn always looked out for Cyan and very much was still in love with Wanda after coming back to the world of the living, but at no point prior to the existence of this miniseries was it ever really explained that Spawn cared about Cyan as a daughter he never had. Yes, she was the daughter he always wanted, or the child that he always wanted to have with Wanda, but it was never brought about in a way that made it seem like he loved her as his own, which is the way it's kind of being portrayed here. And it just kind of doesn't make sense that this would be his reaction, as we've never seen him, express these kinds of emotions up until this point. I don't know. Just, again, it just feels off. Spartan then states, "Well, I guess we're back, so that means we won apparently, but what happened here between Spawn and Zealot from 2015? Marlowe tells them that they need to just ask Spawn himself, but maybe not right now, as it seems like the wrong time, as we see Spawn holding himself on the floor, dealing with all of the terrible emotions that he's going through at this moment. However, Warblade states, Marlowe, if you had seen 2015, you'd have probably thought now is exactly the right time that we should be asking these questions. However, at this point, Voodoo interjects, stating, there's one thing about this, though, that doesn't make any sense to me. If Spawn took the amulet that caused all of this from his future self in 2015, then where did that amulet come from to begin with? We then get an advertisement for the Fire from Heaven ongoing story arc that was happening amongst many of the Wildstorm titles. I have nearly all, or maybe all of these books at this point, so I'll probably be getting around to making videos about this at some point in the future, but it's going to take some time as I need to get pretty far along in some of these stories, but just know that I'm going to get to it eventually, so keep an eye out for it. Even though it might take a couple years to get there, possibly. I don't know. We then get an advertisement for Storm Over Florida, which were several meet and greet events where you could go to meet the creators behind all of your favorite Wildstorm books. Super cool. If you were at any of these events, please feel free to talk about it in the comments below. I'd like to know more about it. And on the final page of the story, we see Chiming Fire reach down into the pool of, I guess, miasma to retrieve the amulet out of the timeline that he dropped it into. As he holds it up, he is greeted by thunderous applause from the other warlocks/magicians who exist outside of reality, who he was simply trying to amuse by changing up the entire timeline, causing a demonic entity to take over the world, as they're all rather happy to have something that is so entertaining to them. And that's the end. That's the end of the story, where we're once again greeted by these characters that we had never seen or heard of prior to this miniseries. And I don't think we ever see or hear of again after this miniseries, if I remember correctly, though I could be wrong. So if I am, I apologize. But that's kind of just the weird, gist of it, of just like, hey, they all got a moment of entertainment out of basically ruining the world. And now everything's kind of put back in place and that timeline never happened. So no harm, no foul, right? We then reach the letter section, and this is the letter section where a lot of readers start to ask some very good questions about some very obvious plot holes in this story. Unfortunately, those questions don't get any kind of decent answer, and this is because in one of the responses, the Wildstorm team basically states that because of Spawn rejecting the dark side when he gave the amulet back to Cyan, that this timeline basically never happens, which is really just a cheap way of giving themselves an out as to why they never actually have to address any of this story ever again in the future. And that's just lazy, in my opinion. There's a lot of different plot holes that get brought up. One of them is a really important point in that Zealot is not a human. She is a cherubim, I think is how you're supposed to say that, an alien species from another planet that lives for thousands and thousands of years. So why exactly is it that she aged so dramatically from 1996 to 2015 when she was already a few thousand years old anyway? And their response to that question was that, oh, it was probably because of her using magic as tapestry. That was it. Probably. We guess. Maybe. I don't know. And I get it that the people responding to these questions are not Alan Moore, the writer of the story. And, it would be crazy for Alan Moore to take the time to answer all of these letters when he wasn't even a full-time Wildstorm employee. He was just someone that they contracted to write this miniseries. But that leads into other problems. I don't even blame Alan Moore for all of the plot holes that exist in this story because of the fact that, again, he wasn't a full-time employee of Wildstorm. And for him to be able to write this without running into any continuity issues with the ongoing Spawn and Wildcat series, he would have basically had to go back and read every single issue that happened up until the point where this miniseries began and make notes and double check and go through all these different miniseries that may have happened as well, just so that everything worked together perfectly. And to expect him to do that for a 4-issue miniseries that he was just working as a subcontractor on would have been ridiculous. There's no way he would have had that kind of time, and it would have only made this miniseries even longer for him to write and longer for the rest of the team to get out to publication. And it's just kind of like, it's why I don't like these kinds of stories to begin with. It's so difficult to make them work into ongoing stories that generally this is the result we get. That this story just doesn't have any, bearing on the ongoing stories, as we've seen with Spawn, because, currently I just released a video last week on Spawn number 47, and none of this miniseries is ever mentioned at all within the pages of Spawn. Even though Spawn would have had all of the memories of the events that took place in it, he never brings it up. It's never mentioned, nothing. It has no bearing on the Spawn story whatsoever. And as far as I'm aware, it really doesn't have any bearing on the Wildcat story either. So it was really just kind of like, here's a 4-issue miniseries that we want you to buy so that we can make more money. Have at it. And we finally reached the end of the book so I could read the credits. Writer, Alan Moore. Penciler, Scott Clark. Inker, Sal Regla, I don't know, Regla, I think. I apologize, I know I'm saying that wrong. Ink assistant, Chris Carlson. Colorist, Leanne Clark. Shout out to her, she did a fantastic job on this issue and the entire series. Letters, Tom Orzakowski. And on the reverse inside cover, we get an advertisement for Wildstorm Direct, where you could direct order ash cans of many key issues of your favorite Image and Wildstorm titles. Really cool. I wish this was still around, and I wish I had jumped on it when I had the opportunity to get some very hard to find early Image memorabilia that I want for my collection and sadly don't have. Oh, just for the ability to go back and change some things I did in my past would be awesome. But, that's everybody. And that was Spawn WildC.A.T.S Devil Day number 4. And I am not a fan of this miniseries. I was not a fan of it the first time I read it, and rereading it to make these videos has only reminded me why I didn't like it. The whole thing just feels pointless. This would have worked if it was a standalone miniseries with characters that did not already have ongoing series that they were quote-unquote trying to tie it into initially. Keep in mind, they made a point to explain that this miniseries takes place after Spawn number 25, but before Wildcats number 15, which would imply that this was going to have some sort of tie-in or bearing on both of those series. However, we learned in the reader responses that were given in this issue that because this timeline no longer exists, nothing that happened in it mattered, which means really the whole miniseries doesn't matter. It feels like such a shameless cash grab when companies do these kinds of miniseries to just try and like, hey, here's some of your favorite characters together in a crossover event that could have been significant in some way to both the Wildcats and Spawn stories, but ends up not being significant in any way, because they were just like, nah, we're just writing the whole thing off, and just saying that everything that took place in this miniseries is basically just gone now because the timeline's gone. It's such a lazy way to get yourself out of having to write a better story, in my opinion. But then again, that is just my opinion. Your opinion may be completely different. You might have thought this was a super cool miniseries and don't have any problem with it not tying into the Wildcats or Spawn stories. And if that's the case, it's okay, because everyone's entitled to their own opinions. If you enjoyed today's video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.